Hello, hello. Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're happy that you tuned in this evening. And, I have to have the crew with me, the best crew in all the land. What's up, everybody? Hey, guys.
Hey,
Hello
Taj.
there.
Hello, family.
Yeah.
Happy
Yeah, we
Sunday.
got demoted. We used to be the favorite.
Now
Now,
we're the best in the
best
land.
crew.
You're the best.
I'm actually starting to believe this stuff.
Yeah. That is the point.
Any adjective would do. Thank you, Taj. I tell
Yes. We're happy that everyone is here.
you.
Thank you for tuning in,
Yeah,
audience.
the whole
Don't forget
Brady
to
Bunch
share.
is here today.
Yeah. All right. So, a lot's been going on in the world. I mean, I think we have a lot to pick from in terms of things that are hot topics on our timelines and in our conversations. But what's sticking out the most for you guys this week?
Well, I'm just glad Nancy Pelosi's husband is all right. Can
Good
you
point.
imagine being hit in the head with a hammer?
No.
Imagine, I grew up in North Philly. It was called Thursday.
Oh,
Oh,
my
mercy.
goodness.
Yeah, I mean,
That's just-
imagine.
But
yeah.
you weren't 82.
Now,
True.
that's true.
And,
That is
and
very
with no issues. I mean, you
That
just
is
being
true.
attacked because of someone not liking your wife. That's terrible.
Yeah, it
really
is.
Really is.
We were talking about violence. I mean, the key to creating violence is, according to several leading researchers, including James Gilligan and others, is if you can get a person to believe that they've been treated unfairly
Mm.
and that the mechanisms to bring them fairness not only will not help them, but will work against them, and then convince them that they are in desperate straits, they will become violent. That's just
Wow.
and then to find out that he's the person who attacked him is illegally in the
Right.
United States.
Yes,
What?
I
Really?
saw that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I saw that.
Wow.
I didn't know
But I
that.
didn't know where he came from. Where's he from?
Not from the United States.
Well, he didn't look like us,
Wow.
so they don't talk about that so much. So
And
Right.
that is the amazing thing about the violence that we're seeing today. Everybody talks about the violence in our urban streets, but there's another group of individuals who are very violent. White males have convinced themselves that they've been treated unfairly and that justice will not rescue them, and that they're in desperate straits, and they're becoming violent, calling people and threatening their lives of election workers. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, that was saddening to hear about that going on. What else is happening?
I was happy to run across an article, a topic. Actually, it came from the BBC about Ora Washington. Do you know about Ora Washington?
I heard the name.
Ora
but I don't know what.
Washington was a two-sport champion. She did not get her prominence, but she was a basketball champion and a tennis champion at the same time.
Wow. Never even heard of her. Isn't that something?
Look it up. It's an amazing story. Ora Washington. She was a champion in tennis and basketball, and she was from Germantown area of Philadelphia.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So check it out. It's a fascinating story. Just goes to show how, racism suppressed, so many great African-American stars and, sports stars, so yeah. Check it out.
Ora Washington. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm on Takeoff, the rap artist who got killed. Senseless violence.
Yeah.
It's not even gang war type stuff. It's over a dice game, and it's just senseless. He was, we look at these rap artists as those who, street mongers or whichever. Most of them brilliant minds.
Yeah.
And it's the persona that they put out, but it's a senseless death, and it just points to where our world is going.
Has gone.
Yeah.
You're right.
We're so
You're right.
violent now.
You're right.
For the smallest issue.
Yeah.
I mean, you deserve to die, right?
Yeah.
There was a story of a young lady, a basketball player. I believe she was down in Texas. I believe she was. Played a young man and beat him, and he went home, got a gun, and shot her.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
Did she die?
she died.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But the first thing to say is, the senseless. But Once again, it's back to that. What happens when I feel I've been unjustly treated? Nobody knows how long this young man has been harboring feelings of impotence and unfairness.
Mhm.
And now this latest insult pushed him over the edge. And we've got to begin to understand why people are doing things that defy common sense. We have to
Mhm.
understand it.
Yep. That
Well,
mental-
and what about the young guy in Parkland only getting life in prison after
Yeah.
killing all of those
Would you
students
rather
and
see him
teachers?
dead, Marlena? Just thought I'd ask.
That might be
Would
a
you
show.
would you
You
We need to
prefer
see me?
the
do.
You
death?
see me?
We might need to
Would
do a
you
show on the
prefer
death
the?
penalty, Miss Producer.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. Would you prefer the death penalty?
Can I plead the fifth? Let me just think about it. Let me pray on that for a little
You
bit.
can plead it, just don't
Let
drink
me
it.
Yeah,
let me
we
pray
do
on
need to
that a
get
little bit,
on that.
Chuck. I gotta
Hold on,
see what
Tally. I like
Jesus
that.
says to me.
Y'all just missed it. It went over my head and I caught it. You can please don't still drink the fifth. I got you, Tally.
Well, speaking of a lot going on, of course, if you're living in America, you have been inundated with a lot of election information, so much so that I think I can recite all the commercials by heart for each candidate in Pennsylvania, at least.
How about your
because-
cell phone? Do they come to your cell phone? Do they come to your
Yep, I get
emails?
texts
text
every
messages.
day.
Everything.
Everywhere.
Yep, about making sure I'm going to the polls and whatnot. So of course the midterm elections are a hot topic, and we're the Upset Podcast. We like to cover hot topics, and so Tally's going to lead us out in our discussion for today. So Tally, take it away.
Take it away. I shall. Thank you so much, Madam Producer. Appreciate it. It's time for us once again to consider the exercising of our franchise as a member of the citizenry of the United States of this here America. And everybody, you know the date, November the 8th, 2022 is when we are being called upon to cast our votes. And normally we work within a system that we call a two-party system, but there are a whole lot more than two parties. There's the Libertarian Party. There is the Communist Party still. There are a lot of different parties, but we are called upon to vote. But as Christians, and particularly most of the people who are listening here are Adventist Christians, we are typically conflicted about our voting because of some of the mixed messages that we have had over the years when it comes to voting in the United States, particularly. I mean, for example, most of you are aware of the fact that many people say, well, Ellen White said that you shouldn't vote. Here's a quotation. The Lord would have his people bury political questions. We cannot with safety vote for political parties. It is a mistake for you to link your interest with any political party, to cast your vote with them or for them. And when you read that and you're not aware of the context, you immediately say, well, maybe we shouldn't be voting, and we have a kind of rabid reaction to politics. For example, we say that there's no politics in the church, or there shouldn't be politics in the church. We talked about that in our last election. But then that message gets balanced by a message like this one. This comes from a General Conference statement that was made under the title Church-State Relations. And it reads, as you can clearly see, Adventists should take civic responsibilities seriously. We should participate in the voting process available to us when it is possible to do so in good conscience, and should share the responsibility of building our communities, on and on and on. So we've had this kind of mixed message about voting, and some people think that maybe we should, some people think, well, maybe we shouldn't. But here is the upshot. Everything that I have seen suggests that we as citizens should vote. And if we're going to vote, we should be aware of what that voting is about, what the issues are, who the personalities are, and what the context of our voting is. So let's take a look at that. In the United States of America, 50 states, we all know about that. But most of us don't know who we're voting for or what. Most people only know when the president is running, or, you'll hear somebody say, who's going to be emperor this year? That they just don't know. And so we need to understand who we're voting for. There are a number of offices that are open, a number of people running for those offices. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to confine it just a little bit. First of all, in every election, you are voting for your Congress people in every election because they run every 2 years. That's mandated. There are 435 congressional seats. How many of those seats are open in this coming election, ladies and gentlemen? Let's hear it from y'all.
I don't know. It's a bunch.
Yeah, a whole
200
bunch.
something.
How about all of them?
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Remember, I just said that in every
Just,
election they're
yeah.
running.
Okay.
So every congressional seat is open. And if you don't know who your congressman is, then you are not being a conscientious citizen.
Mhm.
If you don't know what your congressman does, you aren't being a
Mhm.
conscientious citizen. If you don't know what that person stands for, what the issues are, then you're not being conscientious. Now, there are 435 Congress people. These are your representatives,
Mhm.
but there are only 100 senators,
Mhm.
2 per every state. They designed it that way for a certain level of balance in this country. Now, how many senatorial seats do you think are open this time around, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the audience?
A
Hmm.
bunch of them.
Shall we play the Jeopardy music?
Now their
Sure.
elections are every 6 years, right?
They are every 6 years. And conversely, this time around, there are only 35 senatorial seats
Wow.
that are open. But this is a very important race because even though they're elected state by state, when these senators are elected, they comprise the College of Senators, 100 in total, who will determine a lot of things that happen in the entire country, like who might be your next Supreme Court justice, like whether or not reproductive rights will go this way or that. Many of the laws are voted on and approved ultimately by the Senate. And so many of the battles going around this country are, even though they're localized by the state, they are actually nationally influenced. For example, the state of Pennsylvania has a senatorial race, but it has featured over $100 million being poured into it by just one party because they realize that whoever wins the state of Pennsylvania may cast the vote that determines what goes on in the entire nation. And since we're talking about elections, there's one other race that we need to be mindful of, and those are the government races, the gubernatorial races. I never liked that term. You become a governor all your life, and now they call you a goober. But the gubernatorial races, and there are 36 gubernatorial races that are open. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look. We won't look at the congressional seats because there's just too many of them to consider, but you should do that in your own home. But we should take a look at what's going on when it comes to the senatorial seats. And we start off by looking at Arizona. There's a key senatorial race there. And then we move forward and we look at a very heated battle that is taking place in the great state of Florida.
Mm-mm.
We move up just a little bit. That's right. GP said, my home state. And boy, oh boy, we need to send you down there to get some things straight. We move up a little bit and take a look at what's going on in the state of Georgia. That's, you spell that Jawja, Georgia. And then we go all the way to the north in the Great Lakes region, where the state of Wisconsin has a pivotal race that we have to look at. And last but not least, certainly not least, the state where the Allegheny East Conference is housed, the great state of Pennsylvania has a race. Indeed, Pennsylvania is in the mix. Now, there are other ones. Ohio has a race that's going on that's important. Michigan, the same. But we're going to take a look at just at these because it fleshes out some of the issues that's on the ballot. All right. I want to show you just a real quick grid. And in this grid, I'm going to introduce you to a few personalities and show you what their talking points are. And then we'll be able to look at some of the issues. Let's take a look at Arizona first. The senatorial race in Arizona is going on between Mark Kelly and his opponent, Blake Masters.
Why am I here taking notes?
I took some notes already.
12th grade government. I could have.
Remember, it's being recorded.
I feel better when I write it down.
I'm sorry, Tally. Go ahead.
Most of you might remember Mark Kelly. He's an astronaut. Mark Kelly's an astronaut. His wife was the congresswoman who was almost killed when a deranged person. Now, let's not say deranged. A person who was possessed of his own ideas shot up a rally that she attended And Mark Kelly has been the senator for the last 4 years, and now he's standing for a 6-year term. He is being contested by Blake Masters. Blake Masters is a gentleman in the Republican Party, and the issues in Arizona are always going to be very conservative in their orientation. Gun control is a big issue. Masters is an elections denier. He is pressing. He was one of those individuals standing and saying, "Build that wall, build that wall." So when you look at the issues in Arizona, you're looking at reproductive rights because it's a strong Republican base. Immigration is huge there, and gun control. Always remember, gun control. Those three things are on the ballot, and even though Arizona is voting for them, whoever becomes senator, they're going to carry those issues into the national forum. Now, the state of Florida is really heated up, and I don't know why GP hasn't fixed this yet. But you have in the state of Florida a senator currently, the incumbent Mark Rubio, who squared off against Donald Trump in 2016 and then became his sycophant going forward. And he is being contested by the former police chief of Orlando, Val Demings.
She's a bad sister.
She's something else. The amazing thing is that Mark Rubio is saying that she is opposed to law and order, and she was the police chief. Amazingly. It doesn't stop there. Florida also has a race that pits Charles Crist against the incumbent governor, Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is a frustrated flight attendant because he's the one that got a plane and got all of the immigrants, flew it to Texas, and then took it up to Massachusetts to send it to people in Cape Cod. It is that Ron DeSantis. Now, their issues are election denying. The Republicans are there saying, y'all can't count. Environmental matters, because Florida is always big on environment. Whether or not the government should provide certain services for its citizens, and law enforcement. So those are the talking points. The issues of border control once again. Criminal justice. Florida is one of those states that believes in they don't believe in the electric chair. They want an electric chaise lounge. They just put as many people in as possible. And voting rights is huge in Florida. All right, moving on now. Georgia.
Yeah.
You already know. You already know. Raphael Warnock, whom I met several times, is the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, but also the first Black senator from Georgia since Reconstruction.
Wow.
He is being contested by a man who got hit on the head quite a few times while playing football, named Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker has his own issues. That's the senatorial race. But added to that is the gubernatorial race that features Stacey Abrams, who is one tough sister.
Phenomenal.
She's bright,
smart.
She's hardworking. She's insightful, and if she were white and a male, she would probably be the governor already in Georgia. Some of the talking points you see there are reproductive rights or abortion, domestic violence. Herschel Walker is deep in the domestic violence discussion, and racial equity. Georgia has really been fighting hard for racial equity, especially in the last 10 years. Now, this equals out to an issues area of voting rights. Georgia is right in the front. Donald Trump said that Georgia cheated and stole the election. Criminal Black reparations, which is a huge issue, and education and health disparities. Georgia has been wrestling with their health issues, and now they're bringing that to the national table. The great state of Pennsylvania features a gentleman. I had the privilege of being his pastor at his inauguration when he became lieutenant governor, John Fetterman. I've known him for a decade. He's one of the most authentic human beings I've ever met. He is being contested by Mehmet Oz, the former doctor. Well, he's still a doctor, but he's a former television doctor who had been set up by Oprah Winfrey. She's the one who opened the door for him. Just last night, she endorsed John Fetterman.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just last night.
Sure did.
She endorsed John Fetterman. But Mehmet Oz, he lives in New Jersey with houses all over, but he's decided to move back to Pennsylvania to run for the Senate. But there's also a gubernatorial race. Doug Mastriano, who is a Republican candidate, who marched on January the 6th on the Capitol as an election denier, saying, "Take back our country." is being contested by Josh Cohen, the current state's attorney. That looks like a pretty good
Josh
lock.
Josh Shapiro.
Shapiro, what did I say?
Cohen.
Oh yeah, I have a friend named Josh Cohen. Josh Shapiro, who's the current state's attorney, pretty much locked down. The Republicans are even voting for Josh.
Right? Yeah.
He's really smart. Yeah, he's
You know,
brilliant.
but on now the talking points here is Trump, 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 Trump. Mehmet Oz was endorsed by Trump. Doug Mastriano was endorsed by Trump. The other one is energy. Pennsylvania has always been an energy state. Pennsylvania was the first oil producing state in the country. Now it's about gas and how to get it, which is called fracking. And then local government. Is government about representing people at the local level and then building up, or is it about sending people to represent you and coming from the top down, which is how Mehmet Oz became the candidate for senator. So the issues of voting rights, educational funding, environment, and energy. And last but not least, Wisconsin. This is a really good race. Ron Johnson is an election denying. He's got some issues. I'll put it like that, and he is squaring off against the current lieutenant governor of the state of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes, an African American gentleman who is vying to be the first senator from black senator from the state of Wisconsin. Their talking points is that old canard, tough on crime. Johnson says that Barnes isn't tough enough on crime, which basically means let's go out and beat up some people of color, and that he's too extreme. You hear that quite a bit. But when you listen to Mandela Barnes, he's talking about economic empowerment for everybody and agriculture. He's big on farming. Wisconsin is a big farming state. Johnson wants to get rid of Social Security. He wants to pare back on Medicare, and he wants to see more people put in jail. That's his thing. Those three issues on the ballot. Now, you look at that. That's just a slice of what some of the issues are on the ballot. These people will bring these issues to the nation, and then we will find ourselves confronting them in the next 4 to 6 years. So it is very important that we make sure that we are aware of the issues, of the personalities, of the talking points, and what those talking points really mean. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So say I to one and to all. Ladies
Yeah.
and
Taught me something,
gentlemen,
buddy.
what say you on this issue? Thank you very much.
Well, first of
Wow.
all, because I have to leave early, I want to say thank you, Mr. Tally, for laying that out.
Professor.
I'm a visual learner, and it was very helpful
Yeah.
to see that laid out that way. And I'm
Right,
sure
right.
all of our viewers and listeners appreciated that breakdown. And so we have homework to do, but
Yeah.
that was excellent. Way to
In
lead
2
the show.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
know the
very
issues.
good.
Know the issues,
Yeah.
That's right.
and do not allow yourself to be swayed by a bunch of commercials.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me. I literally started to take notes because I'm a CNN, MSNBC fan, and listening to all of that, I'm only getting little pieces. But Tally, you helped us to connect the pieces together so that to show the bigger story. And especially even for the government side, the goober, whatever you said.
Gubernatorial.
That's fine. We'll spell it out later. It's important for us to know these things because I'm sad to say this, and I remember we did a show before on voting that just recently I started voting. And when I say that, if it's 10 years ago, it's still recent. That's still recent to vote, because I was that person that said, they made up their mind already. We already know what's going on. And my parents were not voters. I'm not sure if they are now, but they were not voters based on the great religion. But here's the thing. But Tally, what you did just now is sew the pieces. You hope for me to mentally sew the pieces together. And I'm sure that there are people who are watching. You need to share this, everyone, because it gives us the opportunity to learn more, even though we think that Arizona or Wisconsin has nothing to do with us. Thanks, Tally. Thanks.
You know, one of the things about Black people, and this is, it's sad, but it's a reality, and that is the sense of Martin Luther King used the term nobodiness. Oppression and disenfranchisement weakens your sense of self. If you
Mhm.
can't, if you go to an amusement park and they say you can't come in, you begin to think less of yourself if you're not careful. And
Mhm.
when you think less of yourself, you begin to think that your actions matter less. So you will go when election time comes. You say, "Well, I don't matter, so my vote doesn't really matter that much," and you
Mm.
don't vote. Conversely, white supremacy exaggerates the sense of self.
Mhm.
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 And so you will find these individuals are energetically going to the polls because they think my vote counts because I'm really
Right.
important.
Right.
We,
Mhm.
we have to turn upside down that sense of not having worth and,
Amen.
and, and carry our vote to the polls. And for our friends in Maryland, we got a lot of folks in Maryland. This is a huge election. You have the
Yep.
opportunity to vote in an African American governor in the state of Maryland
Mhm.
running against a rabid conservative by the name of Dan Cox. Wes Moore he looks like he's going to win, but if people stay home, he won't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we've
Mhm.
got to get out there. The former Republican governor, Larry Hogan, said that the Republican candidate for governor is an idiot. Vote for
Mm.
the black Democratic guy.
Mhm.
That ought to help some people get out and vote, So
But it's back as you said, Tally. If they don't see a need, I think we've been oppressed for so long, and then when people share stories that many of our early forefathers and all fought and died just to
yeah.
vote,
Mhm.
just to
Mhm.
have a voice, and we've been without it so long, we just don't care. It doesn't matter, but we complain about the issues that we live in when, even like I said, even if you feel like you're not being heard, keep shouting it out, and your
Mhm.
shout is through your voting.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And President Joe Biden, he gave a speech recently where he pretty much was saying our democracy is at stake. Like this, if you were ever going to vote,
Mhm.
now is the
Mhm.
time. There's
It's
so
time.
much in this particular election that will affect, people's freedoms and their rights. And
Yeah,
for you
yeah.
to kind of sit back and just kind of throw your hands up, I mean, it's ludicrous to me. I mean, you got to do it. You got to vote.
It should be
Vote.
noted also that there's some theological underpinnings that we have to confront, and that is this. And this doesn't get thought about much, but it's there. Bible readers believe in divine appointment. You know, the king.
Mhm.
The Bible's filled with kings. You don't see any Israelites saying you voting today. I mean, it's the king, and so this idea of divine appointment
Hmm.
fights against the necessity of expressing yourself through voting. And a lot of our people take a negligent view of voting by saying, well, the Lord will make the point, the one that the Lord wants will be the one that's there. And people don't
Mm.
realize that God will leave human beings to their devices
Yeah.
until such time as it crosses his sovereign allowable will,
Mhm.
and we can make a difference, just because. Let me tell you, God allowed Donald Trump, but if God wanted Donald Trump, I'm going to have a serious conversation when I get to glory. You
but
know,
but it's what you said, Tally. I mean, God works through us, right?
he
So
does.
if we don't move, then the other side is allowed. It's like if I need some money, it's not going to fall from the sky. God will send somebody to give me some money, right? And so we don't understand the different forms of government. When there was a king, that was a democratic type of government. You couldn't go out and vote for the king, right? But
No,
this society is, well, the US for today is democratic, right? We get to go out from the bottom up. We choose our leaders. So if you think it's against Jesus and it's not, then I think we have to look at our theology,
Mhm.
because it's not against God. And there have been few Sabbaths I've spoken to get my church out to vote. I know some don't like it. And some says, Pastor, I'm so glad you said that. Because just for me as a person, knowing that the voting rights for us in America, African Americans and other brown people, just been since 1965 that we've had the opportunity to vote in this country that
Mhm.
is supposed to be so great. That's not that long ago.
Well, we've inspired GP so much that he just left to go vote.
Yeah, I think he's,
He just,
early
you know,
voting, right?
just, yeah, he says, I'm
At
not
night,
waiting
right?
another moment in the evening, you know. But it is, you know, the thing about it now, and that is great, and there's no excuse anymore. We don't have election day now. We have election season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can vote for a month ahead of time through a variety of different ways. I mean, to not vote now is to pretty much just to be dysentery, just lazy. I mean, I don't understand why people would. I don't want anybody making decisions on my behalf without
Right.
my input.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why people will just sit back and then complain when they have the opportunity to cast their vote.
I agree. Well, Tally, you know, there are a lot of people, particularly elderly people of color, who are
She's talking
stating
about us, Charles. Go ahead.
how fearful they are to go to the polls because of some of the aggression that some of them received previously. And I mean, of course, there's the mail-in option and some other options for them. But I mean, it's so sad that even the right to exercise your vote comes with a threat of your own life. And to think that there's so many elderly people who feel like they can't fend for themselves, fearful that someone's going to attack them as they make an attempt or do something to jeopardize their vote. I mean, it's kind of a sad reality that some people are really grappling with right now.
I'm not sure if was I looking at intimidation. You had people sitting out there with
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it was.
with guns, with
Mhm.
rifles, in military type gear,
Following
intimidating
people. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
the world we live in.
That's even more the reason why we got to get out.
Sure.
You know, the amazing thing is that most of these people doing it are individuals who would say that they believe in law and order.
Mm-hmm.
But violence becomes justifiable in a person's heart when they perceive that they've been treated unfairly, that they can't get justice, and that they are in desperate straits. And the fact of the matter is there's a contingent of people who really believe that they're in desperate straits. You know, when they see a Black person, let me tell you, there are folks still recovering from the psychic shock of waking up a few years back and realizing, you know, they woke up and said, "Did you realize that Barack Obama guy is a Negro?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It took them a few minutes. They decided, look, we can't have this because our way of life is being threatened, and that's a psychological thing. Then it becomes a racist thing, and then you get to a point where, in desperation, you feel like you have the right to take a gun and go to a polling place, and you have the right to do it. It's called destructive entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are having it, and folks are afraid now.
Right. Even the volunteers, the workers, and not just the people voting, but the people counting the votes.
Sure.
Have been threatened and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Barack. I'm sorry, I had to President, former President Barack Obama. It's so funny because my dad was here recently. He was watching the TV, and I was like, oh, is that Barack? You know, anytime I hear his voice, I just, like. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm hearing a little bit more fervor in that voice than I remember when he was the president. I was like, okay, Obama. And it's funny to me. It's almost like how we tease you, Tally. You know, now that you retire, you can say some things that you couldn't say. You know? I feel like Obama's now putting a little heat in there that he couldn't quite do as the president. But he's going strong.
I thought about that. You know, his preaching is different. His preaching is a little different now. When he was the president, you know, he was following a script.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes he wrote it himself, a little bit of it.
Right.
So Tally, just going off the subject real quick, it's probably better to be in the church than to be the president of the conference. That's another show. Let's go ahead.
Bill, I wanted to ask you, for those voters out there who are not as educated about current elected officials and new possibilities, where can a voter find an unbiased review or report card of their elected officials? How can they know what they have done, haven't done, and cross-reference that with their promises?
Charles, that's a very good question. And in the old days, you were almost at the mercy of mass media. I mean, you had to read a newspaper and you had to look on television. But nowadays, and you have to be careful, because when you go online, it's a quagmire out there. You don't know what's true and what's not true. But there are different websites that are available in every locale. In the city of Philadelphia, there is an organization known as the Committee of 70, and they give an overview of all of the people running, all of the issues that are there, the background of the candidates, some of the things that have happened. And if you're not in the city of Philadelphia, you can look up Ballotpedia. Ballotpedia is a site that gives you the personalities and the issues with a relative level of objectivity. You know, they're not pushing any one candidate. And the thing now is that you have to be deaf, dumb, blind, crazy, and lazy to not access some source available to you, because they're everywhere. People are speaking with you, and so you can find it online. But Ballotpedia all around, and the Committee of 70 in the Philadelphia area is one. But if you do just a casual search, you will find several different places where you can get background on the candidates.
Yeah, I think that's important, because unfortunately we have been relying on the mainstream media, and you've seen all of the commercials, and they follow the same pattern. If it's a Republican commercial, they always show the opponent in black and white, and vice versa. Their candidate is in beautiful color, high res. The opponent is always dark and in black and white, with derogatory, remarks and that sort of thing. So a lot of people are influenced by that, and I think that we should be careful not to be drawn in by the theater of misconception, because it's easy for us. We're a very visually oriented society, and we see these commercials, and the producers of these commercials know that. They're some of the best marketing specialists in the world. And you come to them and you say, I want to make my candidate look like the next thing, next to Jesus Christ. So you guys go to work and make that happen. So just a word of, caution and awareness, even if it is your candidate or someone that you're supporting, just be careful how that candidate is being presented. That's why I think in Balance, if we had a place where we could go and get some unbiased reporting on what they've done and cross-reference their campaign speeches, if there was a way to go back and see what people campaigned on, and then after 2 years, 4 years of service, how much of that has actually come to fruition. I think that's important criteria for people to make a decision, because you may we say, oh, let's go for the black candidate. But is the black candidate any good?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
The black candidate could be Clarence Thomas.
Right.
Who?
Correct.
Yeah.
Listen, just in a quick second, I don't know, lady producer, if you want to put back up Ballotpedia. I just went to it in a quick second that you just said, Tally. And in a couple of seconds, I was able to see in my area in Maryland, the congressional seats, the districts, down to the precincts. I was able to look at. But that's a very good site, ballotpedia.org. Thanks.
And I think it's getting elected official report cards. I think there should be report cards, and they should be out front, because you have new voters, and I advocate voting. A lot of people have sacrificed to get the right to vote, and I think it's an affront if you say, oh, I don't vote. I think it's an affront to those people who have sacrificed to make it happen for us. But I think that if we spent a little more time, most Americans in Western culture, we're just trying to get to work.
Yeah, true.
Roof over our head, get to the ball game, and we don't deep dive into these things until election season comes along. Now watch what happens after the elections are over. It's going to slowly go down.
Mhm.
The PR will slowly fade away. Now the elected officials have gotten in there. Who's watching them? Who's monitoring them? That's just, I'm just throwing this out. I think these are things that we think heavy about elections and candidates. We should also think heavily about monitoring those elected officials to see what they can and cannot do. Because once an official is elected, we all know this because we've seen this in a lot of candidates. They make promises and then they're up against a legislature that bats down their bills and their initiatives. And then they say, well, I'm trying, but, the House is one way or the other, or it's predominantly Republican or predominantly Democrat. So I can't get the things that I promised through because of that. So I'm just thinking voters should be cognizant of these things after the election. And I also think we ought to talk about, well, not on the show, but think about the campaign spending.
Oh,
Mm.
that's
and fundraising.
You Charles, you are in a world now that is more scary than the fun house. It is campaign. When you watch these ads, you will discover that a lot of the ads are being conducted by groups that are the candidate is not paying for the ad. There are other groups. There are ways.
Right.
There are ways you can raise money, spend money, collect money, and things you can do with money. And money.
Yeah, it's called dark money.
It's called dark money. And
Mhm.
I have a book. I'm looking at it on my shelf right now that talks about the unholy power of dark money, and a lot of it is religious dark money, and
And white supremacy money.
and white supremacy money.
And you have to pay back those favors when you get into office. And I just want to add on what Chuck was saying to know, in other words, keep the candidates accountable. You also have to know what the other side stands for. What are they going to do versus just choosing the opposite? Prime example, I want to say, we know the economy all over the world is messed up, right? You see the news of so many nations struggling. So if I say, okay, I'm tired of the party that's in, I want to choose the other guy, because they're going to make it better. What is the other guy doing? The other guy has no clue. They don't even know what to do. It may even become worse. Or as a matter of fact, some of their options are to cut Medicare, Medicaid, or some other things to those funds that or they're trying to tax the very wealthy that don't even pay the minimal 15%. Let's give that back to them. Right. And so we don't even know what's going to happen. And so you have all of these people running to a party that has no clue of what to do. And so I think, as you were saying, Chuck, that we must be educated. We must be smart. I think right now people are just voting their party. It doesn't matter, especially when you look at Herschel Walker. He's saying my issue is abortion, and dude paid 2 women to get an abortion, and then so I think it's just voting down party lines. You don't care. And I'm interested because we have 3 states that we just saw that voting rights were on the table, 3 tables. And I remember when Ossoff and Warnock, right? Warnock, had their elections, right? And the opposite happened of what they wanted to happen, because they just knew historically there was no way these 2 men could win. And when they won, they started to say, some of the not the candidates, but some of the political people, some of them, they started to say, we need a better quality vote. And so they started making changes so that they could have a better quality vote. What do you think that means? That means they don't want our vote. you know,
Brown
the
votes.
black and browns, right?
Well,
They don't want
Mhm.
our vote, they want their votes. And so we see these
Yeah.
states where our voting rights are really at jeopardy. And I think
Mhm.
that we should have a concern.
I want to
Let me-
raise a name. Charles raised a point about money. Have any of you? I'm going to raise a name and ask if you've heard it. Jeff Yass. Have you ever heard his
I
name?
don't think so.
No.
Mhm.
And this is where dark money comes in. Jeff Yass has given in this election season, 2022. He has spent $14 million. One person.
Mhm. Mhm.
One person.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's $18 million.
Mhm.
One person.
Right.
You know, and you have these people, and so the idea is to
And let me ask, Bill, what
Mhm.
comes with that? You say $18
$18
million.
million.
What
Yeah.
could you possibly be spending money on?
Yeah, for a
What
job
does that mean?
typically gives you 100, maybe you know, for a senator, what do they make? 160,000 a year or something like that. I mean,
Someone
what?
who's a millionaire.
Yeah,
That's right.
the Republican Party has spent $100 million to get Mehmet Oz elected in Pennsylvania. Now,
Because it brings
Well,
them power. It
it
gets
brings
them
them
back
power.
in.
Well,
You have to ask
we're talking about money.
Or their other money.
In
Follow the
the
money.
2020 campaign, there was $14.4 billion was spent on federal election campaigns.
That's just federal.
Yes, 5.7 billion for the presidential election and 8.7 billion for congressional races. And this statistic says that Democrats outspent Republicans in races for both branches of government. Now, why am I bringing that up? There's another angle or dimension to elections and to elected candidates and their ability to govern properly and fairly. We know that the lobbyists run rampant when elections come around. I'm just saying we should look at the election story or issue holistically. There are people in multi-billion-dollar corporations who are influencing the vote.
They
Money
influence
talks.
with the
Mainstream
ads.
media
Yeah.
influences, the vote.
Well, you know, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, we just keep in mind that the marketplace for, mainstream media commercials for certain candidates and how, if you've got a lot of money, you get a lot of commercials. You don't
Right.
have much money, you may get one or two run. And all of that, those equations all factor into the ultimate final effect of who wins and who loses. And I'm just bringing it up so that we can have a holistic view of election. It's, you may have one or two issues that are important to you and you say, oh, I'm going to vote for this candidate or versus this candidate. But make sure you're doing it with an amount of awareness and accuracy.
I want to raise another point as far as how to read these commercials. I believe Chuck raised it a few moments ago, and that is people are trying to just go to work and make ends meet. Be wary of people who try to motivate you through fear, through what you fear, rather than what you. I mean, even the Bible. People say, "Oh, there's hell in the Bible," but hell plays a deep backseat to hope. I mean, people who motivate you through hope are people that deserve more of your attention. You will discover that a lot of what you'll see nowadays are commercials that normally start off with ominous music that's you're afraid to walk the streets. You're
Right, exactly.
I mean,
Wait, did you do that
manipulate? They manipulate you all the time.
Yeah, the idea, and they bring you into fear, and they immediately, and you'll get somebody running for Senate saying, "I'm going to make your street safe." They're not going to do a thing to make
Not
your
a
street.
thing.
They can't. They can't. Their bailiwick doesn't even include your street. They don't know where your street is, but they're speaking
Right.
to your fears, and so be mindful and be wary of how people are trying to reach you, how they're trying to connect to you, especially when they're appealing to you through your fear. A bully operates by approaching you through your fears.
Mhm.
Let me
So you
let me
gotta be
give you
careful
one
about
example that I've noticed. I can give you a lot. I mean, I keep a lot of notes on these things just for my own, guidance. But during the pandemic, there was a lot of controversy and support or non-support for Pfizer pharmaceutical company.
hmm
And, independent journalists were wondering why aren't the mainstream media covering some of the derogatory and revealing things about Pfizer? Well, it's because Pfizer was a major advertiser on all mainstream media.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Pfizer also contributed to the Biden campaign.
hmm
So I bring that up. That's just one instance. I bring that up to say, be wary, of who's supporting your candidate and why. I think that's important. And that's why I think ultimately, for me, maybe I'm just old fashioned. I think movements of people make a change in politics. When you hit the street, that gets people's attention. And I think this is why Dr. Martin Luther King never made it out of that hotel. It's because he generated multicultural movements against what's happening. And, politics or not, people have the power. You get enough people on the street, trust me, you're going to get the attention and you're going to get the power. And I think that we should understand that while we find good politicians, we find good government senators and congressmen and good people mean well, we're also up against a monster machine that controls outcomes.
Mm.
So I'm
I
just
want to
saying,
also.
Go ahead,
we need
H.
to
Rap
think.
Charles. I see.
No,
I
no,
hear
I
you.
just want to, I just would like for us to think more deeply and clearly about our voting privileges and the people we vote for. That's
But
all.
I want to also say, Chuck, that it requires movement and voting. If you remember, after President Trump was elected, all these young people, they got out, they marched, they were so angry that he won, and to come to find out, they voted for the ape that was in Washington D.C. that they had
The
shot.
ape?
You mean
I'm
the
sorry.
the
You say
the
voted for the
monkey,
ape?
remember the
Oh,
monkey that was in the zoo when the little baby
okay.
got
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I
I
got
think
it.
it
No, I
was
just needed clarity there.
APE. I really think it was an ape. It
I
was
was like, Marlena, what?
a monkey. It was a real monkey it was a big monkey. So what is that? An ape, right? APE.
Yeah.
And so they put him on the ballot,
Lord have
and
mercy.
that's who they voted for. And then when Trump won, they were very angry, and they got out on the streets and they marched, and so the marching is good, but you have to have the vote behind it. Remember, that's what Dr.
I agree
Martin
with
Luther
you.
King was with. So,
Yes,
and the
I
reason
agree
we're
with you.
saying this is because a lot of young people will now they feel that marching, they understand their right to march, but that might be the only thing that they agree with.
Right.
And then from
Right.
that they feel, okay, nobody is helping me, none of this is going to help me. But I also want to say that recently when the Republicans saw that they were losing, in the polls like a month or so ago, then they started getting these dark money groups just giving money, and they were sending monies to every area that they were struggling in. And
Oh, yeah.
because of the ads that they were putting out, the races became closer and closer, like in Georgia, in PA, and you could see, I mean, it breaks my heart when they concentrate. They show this ad multiple times a day when Fetterman was confused and he was trying to speak his point because of his stroke, trying to get out what he felt about fracking. So they keep showing it, making him look incompetent. And then people will forget all the other moments when he's strong. They don't understand, the medical issues that you just get sometimes just with the speech delivery. Doesn't mean that his brain is not working, as with the speech delivery that continues to recover, over
Sure.
time. And
Well,
so
it's
I
negative
look at
PR.
that's a evilness when you take someone's weakness, to distort them so that they will
Well,
not
that's
even win.
that's politics. But
Yeah.
I'm going to carry from this one. Marlena said that if you're marching and you're not voting, you're just monkeying around.
That was the summary.
I'll buy that, baby. This sounds good.
There are three big factors: class, gender, and religion. That influence our vote. I love when you brought in the fear part of it, because
Absolutely.
because the religious side of us, we breed fear from religion.
We do.
Also.
Very well said, Pat.
And so we have to, sometimes I listen to these commercials and I look at it and I say, wait a minute, this is all to frighten me away from
Correct.
the next candidate. So you almost always have to play dirty in order to get the votes that you need. The safer you are, the more you lose votes.
Fear causes people to move.
And many people voted for Biden because they didn't want Trump, not because they wanted Biden.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
It's that they didn't want Trump.
Sure.
And that's a strange,
But you only had two choices, Chuck. You only had two.
And
if you didn't,
that's another issue.
Well, and then we're back down to that again. We only have two choices. Now it's not Trump, it's Trumpism that's all over the place. You got many people that are just like him, right? And so even if you and let me say this about President Biden, because I just want to say that, no man is perfect. But when you have somebody to stand up and say, we're going to make sure that everything you try to do fails, then we have to understand that there is greater opposition sometimes, because nobody can go in and do abracadabra. I remember when President Obama was interviewed by what's the guide? What's his name? Something the guide.
I don't know.
The young black guy.
Oh, the young black guy.
The Breakfast Club. What's his name? Something the guide.
Charlemagne
the guide, right?
I can't call him that. Yeah.
Well, but I'm just giving his public name.
Yeah, I got you.
So he was asking President Obama, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? And President, he was trying to say the opposition that he had. You go in with every great intention to make sure you get something done, but then you have people who will not even let the smallest thing go because they want to see to your demise. And he was saying how he tried to make sure, all these things happen. And then when he really pushed for the Obamacare, because he really wanted to do it, and he had to use his, what's that presidential vote, right? When you can't get it from the parties. You just use your own
executive
power.
order.
Executive order. That's it. Executive order, right? That's when they said, that's it. I mean, they were against him like crazy. He only got in 2 times by the grace of God, people liking, him and his charisma. But there is, when you have such evilness, when people don't even want us to have, pay less money for drugs, less money, for your insulin, and they feel it doesn't matter. And then you say, well, we're going to vote for them. You're taking away your own rights when somebody else is trying to help you some way, and then you vote for this person who may say, okay, we're against crime, but they're not against the white crime, because we know on January 6th, they deny that or say, oh, it was a peaceful.
It never happened.
Riot,
never happened.
A few little people. Only one person died.
Before we close out, though, there's something that Marlena said about we only had 2 choices. There's something coming that people need to be aware of and that we need to support more. It's called ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting allows people to vote according to their preference. Like, I want Tasha. She's my first choice. But if Tasha is not, if she doesn't win, my second choice is Chuck. And then if he's not there, then Pat. And so what happens is
I don't like the order, but I understand what you're saying.
Sounds good. Keep going.
Well, at least you made the list. I didn't even make the list, dude.
I mean, but ranked choice voting is going to allow people to express themselves over a wider spectrum and take away that false binary of either this or that. And that's going to expand our voting power. It's happening in certain places now. I think New York does it now, but soon is going to be. I'm looking forward to it spreading beyond just a certain local elections. It'll be a good thing.
Well,
There's one thing, Chuck, real quick. I wanted to say this because this is what helped me. The issues, not the personalities. This is going to be kind of hard to say. Not even the parties. All right, it's the issues, and prayerfully that whatever issues they're standing on, that they will keep their campaign promises. That's one of the things that I kept, because some of the issues we're looking at now, we're looking at abortion, and I'm not talking about either way. I'm just saying we're looking at that. We're looking at, and you think it's small, but we're looking at oil, and we're looking at price. Fracking is a big deal. When we're looking at our pockets, right? The economic structure that's happening, voting rights. Marlena, you brought that up earlier. To what we fought for, and you're trying to take that back. You got to look at these candidates and see not only what their promises are, but we also have to look at their past behaviors to see how that all comes into play. They don't change just because they got a couple of votes. Matter of fact, when you started talking about this tally about dark money, I'm looking it up right away, and I'm saying, wow, that adds a whole new dimension to the whole plan. Not just in our political, but also our religious political. And I don't mind even saying it, because if you're elected president of a conference or president of a union or president of etc., what promises are made according to those things? So not just on a wide worldly or US, but even when it comes down to where we are, what promises are made and what are the issues that we need to pay attention to. That's a personal thing for me. My governor, what are you going to do for me? My precinct and my congressional people in my
Council
area, council, what are they going to do for me? And I wanted to say that, especially to young people, it's not just marching, Marlena. Thank you. It's not just making your voice heard, but you got to go to the polls and vote. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
it is a big deal.
Politics, according to Janet
Mm-hmm.
Jackson and Shaka Khan. First, Janet Jackson says, "What have you done for me lately?" And you need to do that. And Shaka Khan says, "No, forget that. What you gonna do for me?
What you gonna do?"
At least
gonna say through the fire, but it's okay.
I wanted to challenge. Sorry, Charles. I want to challenge something Pat said real quick about what are you going to do for me? Because, when I look at this thing as a Christian, we're supposed to look out for the good of man. I mean, you know what I mean? Because
and for the least of these.
There's sometimes when it may not be to my benefit, but it benefits a group of people that aren't, aren't represented or need this assistance or can't get. And so sometimes I think the other side sometimes pushes
a little private chat there.
No, sometimes we're looking at what does it do for me, and that's the attitude I've seen on some of the extreme sides of things. They're looking at, this is what I believe, and this is what
you're right.
But it's like, what about the person who has gone through something and this is a choice they need to make for themselves? So I guess I'm pushing back on that a little bit, because sometimes our voting is very selfish, but we should be looking out for how does this impact those around us, the larger community.
I feel you, Ty. That's beautiful. That's right.
No, Marlena, don't.
It's true. Speak for those who can't speak for themselves. It's true.
They have a name for that in politics. They call those transcendent voters, voters who can transcend their own narrow concerns. And they look at them and smile, and then they get back to people who are trapped in their, because it's easier to manipulate people who are trapped in their own narrow concerns. And I mean, and that's, most people come to Christ because they think that it's going to advance their own narrow concerns. And hopefully we can grow to what Tasha's saying, and we can get there. I
Right.
hope we could.
Right.
But
I don't know. I have a funny feeling y'all
Right.
talking about me. I'm going to take this
Yeah.
on personal right now.
Listen, don't let your
My
fears.
narrow thinking, Tally. Is that what you're saying?
no,
Right.
you're talking about the way most people come to the poll, and that
Yeah,
is
Right.
No,
what's
this is
going
what
my economy and all of that. You know,
Mhm.
No, that's
this
true.
is what this is for,
But-
and I appreciate the pushback because we do have to look at the greater good, and I do understand that part. And I'm gonna say to play both parts. You know, not just you, and I get that, but to know your
Right.
neighbors, because you said the least of these, and I didn't have that even in my mind concerning that part. So
Yeah.
I mean,
My
when you
closing
think-
comment is by all means vote.
Yeah.
Whether you march or not, vote. Be educated about the candidates. Be
Mhm.
educated.
Right.
That means taking some time. You know, we take time to read our favorite novels, and we, take time to watch a little Netflix. Take some time to look up the candidates that are running.
Mhm.
Try to find out as much as you can about them. And then after your candidates have been voted in, make them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Follow
Hold
them.
accountable, yeah.
Make them accountable so that A, you will know what the true colors are,
Mm-hmm.
and B, it will educate you for the next time around.
Mm-hmm.
America, just do your homework. Vote by all means,
Amen.
but do your homework.
Well, I'll wrap up this, and it was enjoyable to hear this conversation, to be a part of it. But I'll wrap it up by saying, November the 8th, you're charged to vote. Your religious duty, your God-given obligation is to participate in the community that you've been placed in by sharing in the responsibility of governing yourself by casting your vote. If you do not vote, then you are forsaking your obligation to occupy until he comes. And so I charge you to go out and vote.
I felt fearful after you said that. Yeah,
I felt free, Tally. Free.
I'm empowered. I'm
he
just
makes me want to be a Christian again. I'm
I
sorry.
know.
Scared to go to hell.
Yeah, it's true. And I did want to share some sites again that were mentioned. Of course, we have ballotpedia.org, and then there was another one that was shared.
Yeah, vote 411 is good.
Vote 411.
Mhm.
We're talking about educating ourselves and understanding what's going on locally for our particular states. So check out vote411.org so you can learn more specifically about what the candidates in your area stand for. It's very important to not just vote blindly, but to vote your conscience, to vote towards the candidates who support the issues you support.
Well,
But thank you. I have to say, Tally, I mean, you really laid it out there.
Great job.
Great
Getting
job.
you there. I
Thanks, guys.
Laid
mean,
it out.
everyone spread this as much as possible. Elections are Tuesday. We don't have much time. So make sure we do our part and help educating others and help them understand why it's so important to care, but not just care. Vote. Vote.
Amen.
Yep.
All right, guys. Anything else before we wish our friends farewell?
You got 2 days. That's it. 2 days.
That's right. Make
Google
your
it.
plan. That's right. Since we weren't live, of course, we love to see your comments. So we look forward to reading those. But if there's something that was said or another angle you want us to be aware of, email us upset@aecsd.
What's Pat pointing at?
He's like over there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we enjoy dialoguing with you all. And if any of us said anything that offended you, we don't mind you sharing that as well. And that's what we're here for, the Upset. And we'll be back next Sunday, 6 p.m.
Yep.
Same place.
Did you put up the email
Upset podcast.
L.Hewitt at
Watch it.
I know how to forward.
write her if you have a problem.
No. All right, guys. Another great conversation. Don't forget to vote, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Blessed
All
week,
right, guys.
everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.